All right, about 2 years ago, I pre-ordered a locomotive and it arrived last night. So I thought I might do a product review video for you guys. I haven't done any model railroad videos in a while, so this was a good opportunity. So out of this box, we have an Athearn Genesis GP38-2, and it's painted for Union Pacific. Now this model represents a current era model that UP currently uses on their system. And it has RCL strobes for the detail part, and it also has the yellow frame stripe. So that way I know it is the modern version of the locomotive. And UP actually designates these locomotives as the GP38 in standing for the next system that Progress Rail built, or when they rebuilt for Union Pacific. So I thought what we might do is a product review video where I get the locomotive out of the box. We're going to take an up close look at the details. I did get the model DC only, so that way I can put my own Loc Sound ESU decoder in there, as well as a scale sound system speaker. So once I test run it on the DC mode, we will take the shell off and then start putting the decoder in there. We'll get that all put back together and put it on the layout for a test run. Hi friends, my name is Steven, and this is my channel Signal Up Productions, where I make videos all about trains. In just a minute, when we get this locomotive out of the box, we'll talk about all the different things about it. But before we do that, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Then click that bell icon so you're notified every time I post a new video. Alright, so these locomotives, they come in this protective cardboard sleeve. We don't need that. And then that reveals the really pretty blue box. This is pretty well the standard box for Athearn Genesis for a long time. I can't even think. There's always these little papers. They really push you to sign up for the newsletter. I sign up for the newsletter. I've been signed up with the newsletter for, 7, 8, 9 years, whatever it is, a long time. And yet every time I visit their website, sign up for the newsletter, you get that little pop-up window. I'd like their website to know, hey, I've already signed up for the newsletter. I don't need that, okay? I can't sign up 50,000 times, and I visit that website a lot. You get the really nice diagram of the model and all the different parts, parts list. Take that and just toss it aside for now. We'll get this puppy out because I know you guys are eager to see it, and I'm eager to see it too. So let's look at it in that camera right there. Oh, by the way, folks, usually they've got spare parts. They've got spare parts in this box, and it looks like some lift rings, and I'm gonna guess that's the retention tank that could go near the fuel tank for the waste retention or whatever it is. I'm not gonna do any of that. I just want to run the engine. It's a sweet looking engine. I just want to play with it. Typical Athearn Genesis sleeve. We can pop that box open right there and lift that out, and look at all that detail on that model. That is really great. So we take that out. There's a couple little plastic pieces. I don't need this right now. I want to make sure there's no loose parts in there. It doesn't seem to be, so that's good. It also comes with these little foam protectors. Take those out. And you guys have probably been buying Athearn Genesis for a long time. You know that they have really nice handrails that are really, really fragile. So, that's what those foam protectors are there for. If you have gigantic, monster-sized fingers and you maybe shake a little bit, or you're not really good with fragile things, find a friend that can help you take that out of the box. Because if you don't really, just looking at this model, things can break. So, I really like this so far, what I'm seeing. I love the RCL strobes. Lots of little antenna details on the roof around the air conditioner. We've got some windows. The cab windows actually slide, so that's pretty cool. There's also the windshield wipers. There's a plow. There's ditch lights on the front. There's actually also ditch lights on the rear. Hopefully you guys can see that. And there's also uncoupling levers. There's MU hoses. There's sanding line details around the trucks. And there's walkway grate right there, a drop step on the rear, and then their anti-climber on the front. One thing I'll notice is the ditch lights on front, I guess, seem appropriate in size. To me, they almost seem a little on the big side, but maybe it's just, my perspective they're probably, honestly, they're probably fine. I do like the ditch lights on the Pilot on the rear. And you can also tell that I bet this was an X Southern Pacific model because it's got the former headlight position right there. And it's neat that they would have left that even in the rebuild program. Now this particular model has a 4-stack exhaust. GP38s are not turbocharged. They're non-turbocharged 16645 prime movers. So they have a Roots exhaust system that just exhausts, blows the exhaust right out the roof there through the 4 vents there. It's got a Sinclair VHF antenna, and it's the Sinclair UHF antenna for the EOT. I know there are some manufacturers that have omitted that detail recently on modern locomotives. Athearn Genesis isn't one of them. Let's see. I can actually see the seam between the anti-climber and the walkway on the front anyways. You'll notice a recent review video I did with the Scale Trains SD40-2. They also had a seam that was gigantic. I mean, it just stuck out. This one I can see, but it's blended nicely into the model. So they must have painted it after, putting the anti-climber on there. So yes, it's noticeable, but it's not nearly as noticeable as the Scale Trains. The only hiccup here was, it was a 2-year pre-order. I ordered it 2 years ago, actually. 2 years in January of 24, I think, is when the pre-order window was open. So it took a little over 2 years to get here. But, it looks nice. So whether or not it has bright enough ditch lights, that's going to be my biggest concern. Are the light bulbs so far back in the housing that you really have to be looking straight onto the model to see any light? But as soon as you are 20, 30 degrees off the edge of the light where it's focused, yeah, I don't know. We're going to put it on the layout in DC mode, try that out. So a little bit of background on these, the prototype locomotive. EMD actually built these locomotives in LaGrange, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago, and they were built starting January of 1972. They were the predecessor to the original GP38 model locomotive. So use the same car body, same frame, upgraded electronics with the Dash 2 components. A lot of the things inside the electrical system of the locomotives were more modular. So if something burned out, a card failed or something like that, they could actually just pull that card out, put a new one in, and the locomotive was back in service again. So Union Pacific has obtained a lot of these locomotives over the years from different mergers and buyouts. They've also sold a lot to short lines and other railroads. Currently on the system today, approximately 250 locomotives of the GP38-2 and the GP38N are still in service on the roster. Progress Rail actually did a lot of the rebuild program for Union Pacific, I believe in Washington State, if I remember the research correctly. And that was around 2018. And a lot of these locomotives got upgraded with this next system that helped with the fuel conservation because it had the start and stop auto feature on there. This model also even has the Graham White E-bell detail that's on the frame. And I'm going to include that feature in the sound profile whenever I get that downloaded onto the decoder, which will also trigger with the horn as the prototype does. I do plan on keeping this locomotive consisted with some of my other 4-axle locomotives, and it'll just be part of my local service, yard transfers, stuff like that, which is really what it's used for on the prototype. Now, EMD built approximately 2,200 examples of the GP38-2, spanning from a time, like I said, in January of 1972 until around 1986, I believe. So I wasn't that old when that production line ended on the GP38 series. And so many of them are still in use in today's railroads that they're really common both on Class 1 railroads and a lot of short lines. I believe even some museum railroads. They've found a home in some museum railroads. All right, well, that's enough about the model. And you guys saw all the great detail. I'm really eager to get it on the track and running to make sure that it doesn't have any grinding noises. And also I'm curious about how intense the LED lights are for the headlights, the ditch lights, and the number boards. So why don't we set that up on the test track with a DC power pack and give it a shot. In straight DC mode, the lights all work, and the headlights are directional. But my concern became reality. The rear ditch lights only look bright looking straight at them. The model draws about 0.4 of an amp starting out, then it settles down to about 1/4 of an amp while running freely. I did try to do a stall test, and it stalled about 0.7 of an amp. So, we've got the engine here. We're going to put it in the foam cradle. I'm going to be careful not to smush any of the sunshade details on the cab. So usually what I do is I just kind of put it right at the edge of my foam cradle, and I'm going to go ahead and take off the coupler pockets. Those are just 2 Phillips screws, and then that will let me pull the coupler boxes out of the front of the Pilot. Alright, on this model, it doesn't appear as though the fuel tank needs to come off, I believe. Let's see, that's normal. That just can come off there that for now. But it feels like the shell is just going to slip right off. So the only thing holding it on there is the coupler boxes. So we're going to be really gentle at this in case there's any wires that are snagged. And as you can see, the wires are connected to the body. For the headlights and ditch lights and everything, so they all come to the frame, to the motherboard, and they're not. You can't just like disconnect them. So what that means is that I've got 2 choices. I can just leave it like that. Honestly, how often am I going to open this this locomotive up like this? So I really could just put the decoder in here just like this. I am going to separate the strobe lights and the wire up the ditch lights to properly be their own independent circuit for front and rear ditch lights, and also the number boards. Now this engine is a 21-pin DCC ready locomotive. That means the motherboard's here, there's a jumper for a 21-pin decoder, but this board here is just a temporary light board to allow it to work on DC layouts. So sometimes what I'll do is I just get a tool of some kind and just gently pry that up, so I don't really want to bend the pins. And if you put too much twist on it using just finger force, then you risk bending or breaking off some of these pins here, and that would be really bad. Now I am going to put the scale sound speaker in, so I've got to remove the speaker holder. Basically, it's just a weight. When you buy the DCC ready versions, the weight is usually in place of where the speaker goes. And so when I take out these screws, I can remove that weight. I'm going to save the screws for now, but the weight, I don't really need the weight, so we can get rid of that. So now we've got the space for the speaker, which I'll get that. And I could use a decoder buddy and wire the LEDs to the removable plug board, and that would let me separate it. But again, I'm not really going to take this locomotive apart very often, so I'm not sure that would be a whole lot of benefit in this particular case. This board is already LED ready, hence their LEDs are already in it. But what I am going to need to do is remove the tape and separate all of the LEDs, the LED wires, and trace which one goes to what. Headlights, ditch lights, number boards, etc. Once I have those all traced, then I will wire those back to the motherboard. When it comes DC from the factory, then a lot of these are just tied into the same function pads, the rear and the front. So at least you do have directional headlights and ditch lights. But I need to separate those and put them on their own function pads. The Athearn motherboard, I believe, has 8 total functions, F1 through F6, and then a front and a rear headlight pad, so that's 8 total. And between the number boards, the individual strobe lights, because I'm going to wire mine individually so they can have a different flash pattern, which is what I see on the prototype. So that's 3, front headlights 4, rear headlights 5, front ditch lights are 6, and rear ditch lights are 7. So that even leaves me an extra function pad if I ever got spunky and wanted to put in another set of LEDs somewhere. But I'm not going to do that. So we're going to take these LEDs off, or the wires off of the motherboard. They also use these little clips on their motherboard, and so I really don't like that. I like to have my wires soldered to the motherboard. So I'm going to take those clips off. I'm going to solder not only the motor wires, the track pickup wires, and all of the LEDs. We do want to remember that with DCC decoders and most of these motherboards, the red LED wire, the positive, is the common. That's your blue wire, if you would, using the NMRA color code. That's your U plus pad if you're using like a decoder buddy. So the positive, the plus, the red, the blue, those are all the same connection, and that's the common connection. So all of the red wires are going to go together on whatever common pad. There's probably 2 or 3 common pads on this motherboard. So all of the reds will all go to those. They don't necessarily have to go to the same common pad. If there's a common on the rear and the common on the front, they are all connected through the motherboard. And then the individual black wires will go to the functions. Those are the decoder outputs that are actually switched on and off through your throttle commands. Alright, so now I've got the motherboard completely removed, and I'm going to get my little battery out, and I'm going to double check which wires are what. That way I don't accidentally wire one to the wrong pad. And also, I've got to look here and see, oh yeah, right back here, we've got the connections on the motherboard for the speaker. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and get the soldering iron turned on and warmed up, get the tip nice and clean, and we're going to solder the speaker wires onto here, the motor wires onto here, and the track pickup wires front and back onto here, so that we've got a nice solid connection and we don't have any gremlins popping up down the road where maybe a wire has come loose or anything like that. We're going to get that done. We'll put that motherboard back on here, and then we will trace the wires for which one goes to which light, and make sure that I get my ditch lights on the same function and my RCL strobes on different functions, just so that it's all ready to program up with the decoder. The wires used on this model are stranded, so I first twisted the ends of the wire, and then I tinned it, each one of them, with a small amount of solder. The truck pickup wires, they're not color coded. Make sure you get the wires from each side of the model matched up and connected to the same side of the motherboard. Otherwise, the model will short out as soon as you put it on the layout. Use a really good adjustable soldering iron. Do not use an excessive amount of solder. With a hot and clean tip, solder the wires for the track pickup and the motor to the proper pads on the motherboard. For this model, I'm using a Scale Sound System speaker. They pretty much make a custom fit speaker for every HO scale locomotive known to exist. This one is the AHGS38-2. They do not come with wires attached, so you're going to need to solder some brown decoder wire to the little metal tabs on the speaker. Do not overheat these tabs or you risk damaging the speaker. This is why having a good soldering iron is a must. Tin the ends of the wire and the speaker tabs. Then hold the wire to the tabs and apply a quick amount of heat. Then solder the wires to the SP pads on the motherboard. Since this is just a single speaker, polarity does not matter. Since the speakers are printed to fit this exact engine, I was able to reuse the screws that were used to hold the weight I removed earlier. I use a little coin battery to test LEDs. These batteries are just the right voltage for a single LED, so it makes it safe and easy to check which wires go to which LED. I also went ahead and twisted the stranded ends of these wires, then tinned them with a little bit of solder to keep them from fraying. Once I have the wires identified and tinned, I brought the shell back over to the frame and started attaching the wires to the motherboard. The red wires from all of the LEDs, they all go together to the F0 plus connections, which are on each end of the motherboard. I attach the rear headlights to the F0 minus pad on the rear of the motherboard, and the front headlights to the F0 minus on the front of the motherboard. Then I attach the rest of the LEDs to the remaining F pads. These function pads will coincide with the auxiliary lighting outputs from the Loc Sound decoder. These wires and pads are very small. Be sure to keep everything neat and orderly to avoid shorting out the motherboard with too much solder or even melting the wire insulation. With that done, I tape the wires to the frame, plugged in the decoder, and place the shell back on the frame. Do this part slowly to avoid pinching or pulling or damaging any of the wires or details. Be sure the shell fits completely down onto the frame. I put the engine back in the foam cradle, inserted the coupler boxes, screwed them on, and I was ready to give it a test run. Alright, well that's it for this video. I appreciate you guys joining me to unbox this model and check it out and get the decoder installed in it. It does sound great. I really like those scale sound system speakers, and I've pretty well standardized on Loc Sound 5 decoders and the scale sound speakers for my models. I'm actually, you might even see here on the table, I'm going through some of my older models that have the incandescent light bulbs and the 8-pin motherboards, and I'm getting those all upgraded to the scale sound speakers, the Loc Sound 5s, LED headlights, and decoder buddies in pretty well most of them. So I'm going through those one at a time. I've got, I don't know, a dozen more on the shelf that I need to work on, but these are the ones that were really important to me to get those done. But then this came in the mail, so I had to get it out of the box and do the video on that. I'm probably not going to do it as part of this video. I think we're just going to go ahead and tie this up now because it's already been a long enough video. But in a later video, I think I'm going to do some weathering to this engine. I don't know how heavy yet. I'm just going to let the creativity flow whenever the day comes to do that. But I will probably make a video on doing that too. I haven't done a weathering locomotive video in a while. And we'll go into some detail on definitely doing some grimy weathering, maybe some graffiti. I haven't decided yet. But otherwise, I'm really happy with this engine. and I look forward to getting it out here on the industrial park and getting it moving some cars. So let's go do that now. I'm going to let you guys go, and I'm going to go enjoy this engine. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.